I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Nami Melumad, boldly going where no female composer has ever gone before on Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Nami, there's such a buzz around this show at the moment. Fans and the industry and critics are really genuinely responding to it. So how do you feel about that? And what do you most love about working on this show?
Wow. Okay. I love everything about the show. As a Trekkie myself, I love the fact that we're going back to episodic structure. So it's every episode they go, the crew goes on a different planet, or there's a different problem, or some mystery to be solved, but it's contained within that one episode. So it's not like a binging scenario. I mean, you can still binge the show, but it's really nice to go back to the way they had it on the original series and the Next Generation and Voyager, so it's kind of going back to the origin, and a lot of it feels like going home for me as a Trekkie, because I love the original series, and I love the colors of it and the aesthetics of it and the sound of it and the looks of it and the music of it. So it was really nice for me also as a composer to kind of allow myself to get closer to that original sound and to that original tone, and work with some of those classic characters like Uhura. This show, for example, we get to know Uhura way better than we ever knew her in the original series. So I feel like we're kind of picking up on a pilot from 1966, but in a way, this is the show that was supposed to happen, and I'm really excited that it is happening, and that fans are loving it, and that the industry loves it. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's dive in a little. This is a 10 episode first season. It's such a treat because, as you say, it's a new spin on an old school Star Trek.
Yeah.
So that begs the question. I'm sure that you get this a lot, but when I listen to your score, there's some beautiful throwbacks and nostalgia. So how much does nostalgia play a part in your creative process, given that it's still a very modern take on a classic?
Yeah, well, it does play a part. Again, I'm a Trekkie, so I kind of, I have to be very mindful of when I'm using callbacks. So when I'm quoting Alex Courage themes, or when I'm hinting on things like that, because you want your theme statement to be impactful. If you use it too much, it's not going to be as impactful. So you have to be very picky about those moments, but you got to choose them right. So it's been part of the thought when I'm writing is like, when am I bringing this in, or am I at all bringing this in? Because some episodes it will not be that present, but it was really fun to go back to a score that is more active and more melodic, and go back to motifs and themes, and kind of living within this orchestral feel in the orchestral world, but a score that is reactive and is pushing forward or laying low, but like kind of going back to that same style and tone, obviously with that modern take of like, okay, we're not doing what the original series has, because sometimes you have these like really quick comments on something. They're like, okay, this feels very abrupt, very quick. I mean, it worked for that time, but like now we have a more a score that fits the the style of the edit and the cinematography. Like you want your score to complement the other aspects of modern television. So obviously it's different, but it was really fun. It's still very fun. We're actually starting season 2 this week, so I'm super excited to go back to this.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you kind of touched on this, but there's a fine line between being too invasive on a scene, and you want to subliminally affect the audience's experience, but then you get those moments where the score can be at the forefront, and we can really experience the particular cue or motif that you're working with. And so is that a struggle or not a struggle, but a challenge that you think that you would have on any production where you are trying to balance the light and shade of where you could go hard and where you can go soft?
Yeah, you always want to balance. This is not just for Star Trek. I mean, on sci-fi, I would say, you know, Star Wars, Star Trek, these kind of scores. Halo, if you're watching, like you can see those moments where score can really take off because there's no dialogue, because there's like a fight scene, you know, spaceship battle, a spaceship chase. Like there's going to be more epic moments for score to really shine. But then obviously under dialogue or in scenes where a lot is going on, then you don't want the score to take the lead. You want it to stay in the background and not call for its own attention. Now, if it still can be melodic and is a standalone piece later, you know, when people listen to it and in the soundtrack album, if that's still a good stand piece, then you did a standalone piece, then you know you did your job very well, because it's still, you know, it still feels like a complete piece. So that is what I'm trying to do. Obviously there's also these points of the scene that you always want to hit. There's moments of shifts that you want to catch. There's like, you know, every little scene, even if it's 3 minutes of dialogue between two characters and it, you know, presumably not a very active score, you can still shift the conversation so much. You can still shape it in the right direction where the filmmakers wanted you to go or wanted the audience to experience. Or maybe there's a crucial moment you want to emphasize, you know, that there's a change in the reaction of one of the actors, or so you always want the score to react to what's going on, and never too early. So that is also, you know, you don't want to predict things. So yeah, it's I think it's part of the fun, you know, in film scoring, because then you get to, like, you know, you have to figure out these moments and kind of create your tune or your melody or your texture or whatever between those moments. So that's really cool. That's, you know, it's like a puzzle and you have to solve it, and I love that.
God, man, you have the coolest job, honestly. It just sounds so much fun, but also like a real challenge, and you can really challenge yourself and test yourself and try to improve and develop. Let's talk about some of the tracks. Like, there's some great tracks on here. I've got a couple of favorites, but let's first start with First Contact, which is a blend of nostalgia, and it's got this softer ambient underscore, which I think there's a lot of that in this score. So talk me through a track like First Contact, even Strange New Worlds. Like, I think I heard a theremin at the end there. I could be wrong.
There is.
Oh, good. The nostalgic, I mean, you don't overplay the nostalgia. If you did, that would have been probably slightly problematic, but I thank God you just hit the right amount.
Yeah.
So talk me through those two tracks. They're kind of the beginning and the end of the episode.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, these are exactly the first and the last tracks in the episode. So First Contact is, you know, the scene, which I assume, have you watched the show?
Oh, like, yeah. Yeah.
So obviously the scene, this is like under dialogue. We're not exactly sure what's going on yet, but like then we find out that like this is a first contact scenario from the side of the aliens. So we are the aliens for them, which is, you know, and it's the first scene of the first, you know, show. So technically this is the first time we're reintroduced to the Enterprise. And so I figured that is obviously the right moment for that callback of that motif from the original series. But obviously it's revamped in a way that it kind of continues and grows and grows and grows until you see the Enterprise, and then you have that statement of, you know, the fanfare of Star Trek. So that was really fun to do. And then the rest of the scene, that was actually, we talked about it during the spotting session, the first spotting session of the series. And Akiva Goldsman, one of the showrunners, he kind of wanted me to go further from Star Trek. So it wouldn't sound exactly like Star Trek, because when we meet Pike, he's very, you know, he's trying to further himself out of Starfleet. He's not sure he wants to come back.
Yeah, he's off the grid. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. He's in Montana, I think, like, you know, in the snow with his horse. So with the girl, like, you know, he's not into going back to command right now, and we wanted to reflect that with the score. And so you have these like distant pianos, like, you know, tune, and that is kind of like it's not very traditional to start a show like that, but I wanted to do something that supports that mood. And then once he, rides on the horse and he goes back, and the April comes to schlep him back to the Enterprise, then we're going back to the Enterprise. So this was really fun to do because it was actually super different than what you would expect at the beginning of a Star Trek show. And then the very ending, it's kind of, the same idea. We're going back home to the Enterprise, and Pike is, kind of accepting his reality and accepting his family. He's not yet accepted his fate, but he's willing to come back and deal with it. And so he says, the Enterprise is my home. And on that final scene, as he walks into the bridge and everyone's there, and we get a surprise new lieutenant, and all of these, it's such a powerful moment for the crew and for the Enterprise. So I thought that would be also a good callback. And again, these are all variations, my modern takes of the Star Trek theme, but I felt it was appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Return of Pike is the track where
he rides on the horse.
Yeah, he comes back, and it builds to this mid-track crescendo of this rousing, heroic melody with these pensive strings underlaying it. And that's the music you want to hear when the captain's coming back, right? And about to take command. And you do something similar to Peacemaker, another track later on, where there's almost this underlying percussive military vibe going. So I noticed that you try to make the score feel heroic, which is so appropriate because we're just watching these characters go off onto strange new worlds and be heroes of the story. And they're not anti-heroes, they're not dark, they're just heroes. And that's really refreshing. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's partly why I love Star Trek so much. I mean, and especially our show, because Star Trek is about that promise, and it's about a hope for a better future, and the people of Starfleet are trying to better themselves. And yes, obviously there's enemies, there's dark times, there's things that are not entirely the best, but as they encounter other worlds, and then them too, not all the relationships are perfectly fine, but at least there's this sense of adventure and promise that things are going to be better, and not everything has to be super dark and super, I think that's part of what makes our show positive, and fun, and it could be a lighter tone, and it could be some comedy, and a lot of comedic relief, actually, even in the most crazy scenes. You'd still have either Pike or Ortega's some really nice joke moment. So I love that. There's also some self-humor that can be seen in this, which I like, and there are those darker moments in the show. There's going to be fights with the Gorn, there's going to be battles, and people are going to be missed later on, but that's the beauty of a show like this. You can from a music perspective, you can go to different directions, which is great. You get to do the sad stuff, and you get to do the happy stuff, and you get to do the heroic stuff. And that's when you introduce your captain, yes, you definitely want to go heroic, and he still has this little dark texture underneath, because his fate is not great. He knows how his life ends. That's not really something that just it's not easy to deal with something like that. So that is why I'd say it's not entirely positive. That's
right. There's an undercurrent, and which is so perfect, because we, the audience, also share that knowledge. We know where he's headed. And so there's always going to be that slight glimpse of sadness or hesitation, whatever it may be. Let's talk about my favorite track. There's two, really. When you do tracks like We Cannot Interfere and Catch the Rabbit, they feature, I think, horns and this non-stop bass line, pensive cello or violin or viola, and a genius mix of, I think, the legato and even staccato in there in terms of how you just keep it going at this point, and then you've got this other stuff going up here. I'm using my hands because I'm Italian, right?
Yeah.
And then there are examples of how you do this very immersive underscore, and it even reminds me of, you know, the beautiful work that Jeff Russo does and Michael Giacchino, and, you know, obviously composers that have you've taken the baton from.
Yeah.
So talk me through the challenge of getting those tracks right, because they may seem simple on first listen, but if you listen to them carefully, there's a lot going on in those tracks.
Yeah, of course. So a lot of those are more like the actiony or like active. I'm not sure it's like super heavy on action, but like it's, you know, it's like a lot of things are happening on picture. So you kind of want to hit all those moments, but you also need that constant pulse, because like there's a lot of energy in those scenes, and you want to propel it further. So yeah, you kind of want to, so to keep the tension going, you have this beat, the constant beat. And it could be, you know, used by basses, or as you're saying, like staccato strings, maybe some synths a little bit. And then, yeah, you spice it up with woodwinds, with horns, whenever there's something kind of more heroic or more fun is happening, then you can have a statement of the theme, or like a variation, or some sort of, you know, a melodic element. But yeah, I'm definitely trying to catch, everything is inspired by the picture, so I'm trying to catch the right moments all the time, and that is the first priority always with film scores. And yeah, I'm definitely heavily influenced by Michael Giacchino. I grew up on his scores, and then you know, obviously the Trek scores, and but not just. I mean, when you look back, there's Pixar stuff that he did, Star Wars, like he's done a lot of things, even Lost and Alias, like, you know, the shows, Medal of Honor, video game. So you know, I've worked with him on multiple projects, so obviously our styles are kind of you know, going well together. So yeah, I'm definitely you know, I think it's a good influence, to be honest. Yeah. And yeah, I'm very, you know, and Jeff Russo too, like and Courage, like Courage, sorry, and Goldsmith, like I'm very influenced by scores that came before, especially on Star Trek. You know, it's and that makes sense, because, you know, we're basically all writing on the same timeline. Like, I mean, yeah, even if it's a Kelvin timeline, but it's still the same, you know, it's the same world, like the same universe, let's say. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how there's all these slight little throwbacks and little like winks of the eye, but yet this is very much, if I was listening to it without even seeing, I could tell it was Star Trek Strange New World. It's just got its own vibe. My last question is one really about what I mentioned when we first started, and that is, everybody wants to talk about, you know, you're the first female composer of Star Trek, and that's wonderful. I mean, and I'm really happy finally that we're seeing more work from these incredible female composers that I've had the pleasure of speaking to. But would you love there to be a time soon, hopefully, where this is not even a talking point? It doesn't even
well, yeah, that's actually something that I think we aspire to. I'm a board member of the Alliance for Women Film Composers, and whenever I'm asked, like, you know, what are we trying to achieve? So what we are trying to achieve is to come to a point in the timeline where this is not even a conversation. Like the 50-50, you know, that would be a great scenario. But until we're there, I think we should advocate for more opportunity for women. Now, that being said, I still think the right person for the job should get the job, right? Like the talented person, the person with the, you know, the person who will get the job done the best, like for the project. But the fact is that in recent years, and we're talking about like 100 years, there has not been enough opportunity. Like people haven't even considered women. So, and when you do give women the opportunity, they rise, like, and they actually have to do things sometimes even better than the guys in order to, you know, to prove themselves. Like I know this because, you know, I've worked really, really hard to, you know, to ensure that when I get the opportunity, and when I get the budget, and when I get the, you know, the opportunity to work with an orchestra and stuff, that it will be, you know, as great as the big composers, you know, the A-list guys. And unfortunately, most of them are not unfortunately, most of them are guys.
It's a boys' club.
So yeah, so it's a big responsibility too, because now I have to do a great job so that, like, you know, the producers will see, hey, so girls can do it too, and they're good.
They're damn good. You're right.
Yeah.
There's so many to choose from. We could be here all day. On that note, Nami, thank you so much for your
Sure.
time today. I've really enjoyed this score. I'm looking forward to what you come up with for season 2, and good luck for that.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for watching and for listening.